Welcome everybody. Welcome to Neutral Lounge, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joel, and with me as always is my co-host Alex. Together we make up the Neutral Lounge. In this episode we talk about game services and the Bethesda Microsoft deal, AMD, Nvidia, Intel in 2021 so far, PSVR 2 and the state of VR, and cloud gaming. Without further ado, let's talk tech. Hey Al.
Hey Joe.
So I think the first topic of the day is going to be really just game services, and
Mm.
obviously Bethesda just joined Xbox really, so the deal's done.
Yep. Yep.
Microsoft and Xbox have just acquired themselves a whole load of first-class IP
Yep.
and exclusives, I would say. I think what I want to talk about is, how will Game Pass develop because of this, and what will PlayStation, do
Mm.
to counter this? I mean, do they even need to counter this? And
Yeah.
one part of the conversation that people are not having is how it really impacts the existing game stores
Yeah.
like Steam or Epic, because it's not really an Xbox versus PlayStation thing.
Mm.
It's a Game Pass and everywhere else that you can get games.
Yeah. Because it's an interesting one, right? It's the same way as as you treated kind of owning videos and DVDs back in the day versus streaming it nowadays. Paying a service from Netflix, paying for a service from Amazon Prime and things like that. It is a shift, and I think it does it does beg the question, how these are they going to continue to keep evolving? Is that the way forward for everything? Even if you look at videos and DVDs and stuff, I think people are slowly moving them onto, purchasing them digitally. I've certainly been doing that. I've been less so on the streaming services. I mean, I think I'm using I'm using Prime Video. That's the only thing I'm really using, and obviously YouTube, but not YouTube Premium or anything like that. So yeah, it will be interesting if there's more kind of service providers of these types of game services, or whether you know game stores like GameStop and others try to move into that sort of industry as well.
Maybe even Steam.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. I mean, you can't imagine that the digital storefronts aren't going to be impacted.
Yeah, I mean the big contender and the big one that's really spending lots is obviously Epic and their Epic Game Stores. And they're giving away lots of free games, not as part of a pass. Interestingly, it's just free for you to own. Um, yeah, and whether they would change that model at some point to be more subscription based.
I do wonder if that's really the key. At the end of the day, when you look at Games Pass, I coin it as kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Yeah.
PS Plus at the moment is, I coined it in another video, more like a tasting menu,
Mm-hmm.
where you come in and you sample certain dishes, and some of which are signature dishes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I thought about this, I thought good for Xbox owners and Microsoft and PC owners who have a Game Pass. They're getting much better value.
Yeah.
But then I thought, how much time do I really have to kind of like plow through hundreds of these games?
Yeah, this is where I think the services and the subscription model, there's only a certain set of customers which it makes sense for, because if you take I mean, I play probably quite a bit over at the weekends, but then I actually prefer owning the particular thing. And if you're not really playing that much, should you really be paying for a subscription service that you're never going to get all the way through the content in there? If you're playing that much, do you want actually a rented service, or do you want to try and purchase them and do it from there and build up a library?
Yeah, I think the level of optionality is always good. What I would say is that when you look at it on paper, the amount of value you get from Game Pass is, let's say, it's a 10 out of
Yep.
10, something along those lines. When you kind of using it practically, it's actually more like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because whilst you've got the option of all of that, all of this great content, you don't have time for it all
Mm,
necessarily. You're really focused on a handful of games that you really actually want to kind of
yeah,
experience.
yeah,
So the value on paper versus the value in practice is somewhat
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Honestly, the only way I think Sony could compete with that service at the moment not necessarily offer hundreds upon hundreds of games. Focus on what their strengths are, and that's
Mm.
that, first party killer IP that they're known for, and somehow wrapping that up in a model that you can give people. Sony will be thinking, well, listen, we make millions upon millions of pounds by selling these games
Mm.
for, I don't know, 50 to 70 pounds now, whatever the number is. It's a stupid number, I know, because obviously they've upped the price of the old games, right? But they don't have to do that day one, do
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Because the people who want that content, they'll buy that
Yeah.
content. But the value of their service will be that you'll get it over time. Will it be, I don't know, 1 year,
Yeah.
6 months, whatever it may be?
And maybe it's a certain market as well, and maybe because we're slightly different, whereby I think because you get a breadth of games and content that you get from these game passes and game services, then actually maybe you need a family of, a dad would go after certain games, their kid may go after certain types of games, and actually if you then split it and say you've got multiple kids or something, they're after different types of games, then being able to share that kind of service would be quite an interesting one. You take full advantage of the content that's available in such a subscription service.
So you're going to organize the
Mm.
content depending on who's using the pass, yeah.
Yeah, because Steam also give you that family library as well, where you can share it with. I think I can't remember if it's one or maybe there's multiple. I think it was multiple actually, because I was able to share my Steam library with my brothers, so they could have my content when I'm not actively on my Steam account, as in playing a game on my Steam account. Then they can have access to my full library.
Which is a fairly consumer-friendly way of
Mm.
doing things, I
Mm.
think. Why not? The other point I would make on the whole Bethesda,
Mm.
acquisition really is, what have Bethesda done actually recently? I
Not
mean,
a lot of successes, I
I
tell you
mean,
that.
don't get me wrong, right? I think of course it's seismic because under the under the acquisition, you've also got ID,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
obviously, so you've got Doom, you've got Wolfenstein, you've got all of that. All right, so obviously that's a
yeah,
big deal. But a lot of people have been talking about Bethesda,
yeah.
Skyrim, Elder Scrolls,
Yeah,
whatever it is, right?
Fallout, I think, is obviously the thing,
Yeah,
and
Fallout.
obviously Fallout 76 recently, the thing that's
Yeah.
yeah, they killed their image, I think, with the stuff and things that they do.
For my money, the kind of tech press, the fanboys, kind of drumming this
Yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah,
if you ask
yeah.
me. The other thing that's in my head as well is that you have obviously another group of PlayStation owners or fanboys,
Hmm.
whatever the case may be, who are just kind of screaming bloody murder because of this. But when you look at the numbers, the top selling titles, on the
Yeah,
PlayStation are typically first party Sony
yeah,
titles.
yeah. Or I think GTA did really well, but then you've got stuff like
Yeah, yeah, of
actually
course.
in the past there was things like Tekken that sold really well as well.
Yeah, but that's synonymous with PlayStation,
Yeah,
Tekken.
and then although Tekken's now, I guess it's pretty much on every platform now, Tekken. But back in the day, it was obviously one of its main selling points.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
and what was it? The Gran Turismo series that we talked about previously as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
first party. But yeah, it just got me thinking. I mean, like we're well, not we per se, but I mean, people are just screaming bloody murder about this, and like, oh, it's the death of PlayStation and whatnot. But is it
no,
really?
they've got. I mean, I don't think they were really selling. I mean, Skyrim VR was really good with the PSVR, but I don't think I'd be surprised if anyone plays Fallout 76 on the PlayStation 4. It's just like,
Yeah, that's.
why?
I'm guessing people still play that now.
I know,
So
I know. It's just like,
because I remember the
why?
reception not being entirely kind of spectacular when it came out. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, the mind boggles, right? But I mean, look, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
The acquisition itself is going to be fantastic for Xbox
yeah,
and
yeah.
Windows PCs. Yeah, there's a lot of great kind of IP there. Let's not forget how good, Doom Eternal is.
Mm.
The Wolfenstein games have been great.
Apart from the last one as well, this is the problem: is that the last few each one of them have had something that's not been that great.
But Arcane are there, who are
Hmm.
ironically doing Deathloop, which is a PS5
Yeah,
exclusive. They've had the Dishonored series, so there's
yeah.
content there, to be had. It's just that I'm just not 100% convinced it's this kind of like world-ending like event. It's big, It's not like Naughty Dog switching allegiances to Xbox or something like that, is it?
Yeah, if Rockstar Games then suddenly went to one side, then yeah,
Yeah.
then that's much more significant. I just don't think they sold that many Bethesda games on PlayStation to warrant anyone to panic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't understand the panic. I kind of understand that for Microsoft to have acquired these studios, it's a massive thing.
Mm,
But
mm.
the panic, from the PlayStation fanboys and the high fives you're getting from the Xbox fanboys, I don't really understand, I mean, necessarily. I think, well,
It's just a dig, I guess, right? It's just anything to have a
yeah,
dig at, because it would be like, I guess, PlayStation owners that don't venture to an Xbox or venture to a PC, they will be limited. They'll be
yeah, of
limited on
course.
what they've kind of got.
Yeah, I mean, but logically think it through. PlayStation can't play Halo, it can't play Gears. Yeah,
Yeah,
that hasn't changed. Xbox can't play Uncharted, it can't play The Last of Us, it can't play God of War, it can't play Horizon, and there's a number of things it can't play. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
I
It's
mean,
like,
that's why you could argue PC Master Race, right? Yeah, even some of the Sony exclusives, Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff like that, and Death Stranding have gone onto PC and things. So, you know,
yeah, I think, again, like, I mean, some of the PlayStation Nation will hate me for saying this, but I think good on Sony.
mm, mm.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
You've got this large contingent of gamers, yeah, sitting on PCs. Sony have got this great IP. Why not roll it out to them?
yeah, yeah,
Why not broaden your horizons? Why not advertise the next kind of version of your game that's coming out?
yeah, yeah.
Why not keep these studios in business?
Indeed,
Yeah, because
indeed.
it's expensive to basically develop games. You want to do as much as you can to ensure that the business side of things is kept going.
Yeah,
They can keep creating.
exactly. You want players. You want players on it. You want people to purchase it. You want people to buy the brand and the IP, the merchandise, the everything else all the way around it, right? You
Yeah,
build
correct.
brand kind of loyalty around it. That's why you get the people pre-ordering the next one and things like that. And you get hype around it. If the more people play a particular game, the more popular it is.
Yeah, correct. I gotta admit, I mean, I'm not sure that I like the idea of Games Pass becoming this monolithic service.
Yeah.
It's like a black hole where
Mm,
it
mm.
sucks everything into it, and without you being on Games Pass,
Yeah.
you can't really access it.
Yeah.
That I'm not a big fan of. I like the fact that there are independent studios out there
Yeah.
and publishers outside of the Sony ecosystem, outside of Nintendo, outside of
Mm.
Microsoft. That I'm gonna stand
I
by.
I think it'd be interesting if they do stuff like so at the moment there's very limited, I guess, in the number of game type services and game type passes. But if you think of like the TV or the Sky kind of TV kind of subscription model, if you think of like, I want these types of channels, I want these types of games, maybe the passes should be these genres of games should be part of an additional add-on to your subscription. So then you can pull them together, right? So you have more
Yeah,
choice,
you
really.
have a bit of a partnership, but
Mm.
the only thing with that is you're just short of a monopoly.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's where I kind of think, well,
You could argue Sky as a.
yeah, well, we know how much Sky BSB has got in trouble in the past, right? I mean, I would prefer that we stop short, of that.
Mm.
There should be a fair degree of, I would say, independence and autonomy in the
Yeah.
industry, rather than having one or
Mm.
two, I would say, powerful umbrella corporations controlling everything. That I don't want.
Yeah.
That I certainly don't want.
It's difficult because you're tied to multiple things, right? If you think of the reasons why Steam, the game store itself, Epic and its game store, and then you think about the charging model that they apply on top of it, right? They take a cut for obviously having your particular game listed. If you're using particular engines, you have to pay particular cuts in it. So there is a whole kind of tie-in around that based on a market that is a store that is tied to something that requires additional kind of money and a usage license
Yeah, I
around
mean,
it.
what I would say is that, and the reason I wouldn't want this to go too far, the reality is,
Hmm.
right, when you align yourself to whatever storefront, whether that's Epic, Steam, Game Pass, whether it's PS Store. You're actually aligning yourself to, the penetration,
Yeah.
getting that for whatever, license, subscription, royalties you have to pay, where it is. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
But the reality is, if you have a small number of people who control that market, like I said, you're more or less in a monopoly.
Yeah.
You also then got the power to direct people down a certain route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You basically controlling the ecosystem fully.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are dangers. I don't necessarily think it will go down that route, but
Yeah, I mean, my general view on the game servicing is really tied to the last topic, the cloud gaming service portion of it.
yeah.
And I've got some views on that latter topic. But yeah, I think they're interlinked really. You've got to do, if you want a really good game service that's going to work, you're going to have to tie it to cloud services as well, I think.
In saying all of that, one thing I will say about what Xbox has done is that I actually feel it's pushed Sony into giving away more free games.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It has to. Yeah, there's basically all the fanboys are comparing the the what you get on the on the subscription services.
Well, I'll basically say this, right? Since the launch, we've had more free games on PS Plus than I recall in the whole of the last year. Of note that in my view are noteworthy, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
That are noteworthy.
Yeah, and Sony are actually giving away a bunch of games,
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
It's for Easter or something. I don't know what
Yeah,
it
it's,
is,
uh, it's,
what
the, it's
holiday
the
it
whole
is, but
play at home initiative.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I basically kind of logged in yesterday and got them all.
yeah. Nice.
And
Yeah.
I tell you, there's some good games there.
Hmm.
VR and kind of obviously non-VR. Yeah,
Yeah. What was it? Moss, I think I saw was
yeah.
and was it Astrobot? Those two
Uh,
are really big kind of VR games.
the Horizon Complete Edition
Yeah,
is going to
that's
be out there
huge.
soon. The last Ratchet and Clank game, which was excellent, that's there. And then on PS Plus, obviously they've had the Destruction All Stars, which
Mm.
was going to be a full price PS5 game. That's free.
Yep. Yep.
I think Control was free,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Ultimate
Hmm.
Edition. Since the launch, there have been some very good freebies from Sony, and I can't help but think it's because of the kind of value that Games Pass is giving. There's your competition.
Yeah. And plus, I think it's still missing some launch titles, things to keep PlayStation 5 going. But then again, I guess there's also an issue, obviously, with the limited availability of PlayStation 5s as well.
When it's all said and done, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic
Yep.
that's impacted almost everything and everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
In actual fact, I'm actually lucky to have any of these consoles come out.
True. True.
On time, right? And I just feel that, giving it another half year,
Yep.
we might see a steady stream of games being delivered. I mean, I think the next big game coming out on PS5 is going to be Return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's been, I think, delayed until April now,
Okay. Okay.
or late April, I should say.
Yeah.
Or was it later April? I can't remember now because it was a March game. Now it's an April game.
Mm-hmm.
So games will be coming out, and factor all of that in. Middle of the pandemic affects
Yeah.
everything. Hardware supply affects people. So obviously the people who are developing the hardware and the software, there's going to be delay.
Yeah.
You're not going to get everything you want, day one, but it will come. In many ways, I just think we should be kind of grateful
Mm.
that even got these new consoles.
Yeah. 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 We should be. We should.
Obviously we've kind of turned it almost into a Game Pass versus PS Plus,
Mm.
fight. But really, how do you think Games Pass is going to impact stuff like Steam and Epic?
I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. Again, it's that middle ground of ownership versus renting. I guess renting a service. And I think people will still want to have ownership. Much like Blu-ray collections, or even now, it's now slowly building onto which online store have you got video content on, and building up a catalog in there as well. Ownership versus renting. I think people still hold on to the fact that if they're not going to be watching that much, then the service doesn't make enough sense. Unless they're using it enough.
Yeah, I personally think it will have an impact.
Hmm.
I just can't imagine that if something like Games Pass, and I'm only thinking about the high-profile AAA games.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If obviously Games Pass are able to throw money around and get some of these titles as part of Games Pass,
Hmm.
revenues are going to get hit either
Hmm.
via Steam or Epic.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there will be depends on the model for the game service, right? If they have to purchase it, because in theory, the underlying end company would still get money for it. For someone must have purchased it, whether it's the game service or or an individual owner.
Yeah, but if you consider that, some of these game stores that we know and love, like Steam and
Hmm.
Epic and whatnot, they must work on a royalty basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get a cut, and
Hmm.
equally the developers get their cut. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if you look at Games Pass, obviously there ain't no cut per se, but there's a
Hmm.
fixed lump sum. I'm assuming, or maybe there's some sort of tiered or banded mechanism for something along
Hmm.
those lines for
Yeah.
payment. So unless that lump sum is astronomical,
Yeah.
someone's going to lose out. If you know what I mean,
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
might
Hmm,
not be
hmm.
the developers per se, but someone is going to lose out here.
Yeah, yeah. Someone with all these sort of all-you-can-eat services will
Yeah, yeah,
try and take advantage of it, right? They
yeah,
will utilize it to its
yeah,
limits.
yeah, yeah. Of course, right. And yeah, you don't have to pay for Steam if you don't buy something from Steam. It's
Mm.
just there. Steam's
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
If you subscribe to Games Pass, you get everything Games Pass has to offer. But then that revenue that Steam might be making gets cut off, or
yeah,
it starts
yeah,
to significantly reduce.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So during a window of release, right, you might see a significant drop in kind of revenues because of that. So, yeah, I don't know why people are not talking about that. To be honest, I'm almost scratching my head at this because sometimes
I
it's like the whole kind of Warframe v Destiny conversation.
Yeah, but I think it's also because I think stores will exist for quite some time because it'll
Yeah, yeah,
be even if you were to look at the impact, I would say the biggest threat to game services is free to play games. If there are good enough free to play games out there, do you need a game service
mm.
that offers
Oh,
you
that's an
a bunch
interesting
of
one.
these games that you don't need to pay anything for, technically?
Yeah, do the game stores get a cut of the microtransactions?
Oh, this goes into the Epic versus Apple. There is something, but yeah.
I think if that's the case, then not a problem, right? I think it will become a problem when a service like a Game Pass, this all-you-can-eat service, decide, you know what?
Hmm.
They'll say, free-to-play games. That's really part of our future. We'll not only, we'll offer them,
Yeah.
and what we'll also do is give maybe credit or some sort. I can't imagine that they'll be allowed to basically kind of offer all you can eat in terms of the microtransactions because that would give the game the kiss of death.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
they might chuck out credit and say, okay, with Game Pass it's free to play, but we'll give you X amount of currency in game,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that would really put the cat amongst the pigeons. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's all sorts of ways this could go. Or, Games Pass might say, that's not our bag. Because if
Yeah.
we did that, then, we might be really hurting this kind of free-to-play game or the studio behind it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
unless, of course, it's their game. That's a different story altogether.
Yeah, I'm wondering because I know it's the main issue comes from obviously things like being on Android in the Play Store, being on Apple and the Apple Store. I think those are the main contentious ones. And there's that legal case, right, with Epic and Apple. I think is the main one because I suspect it's Fortnite. It must be Fortnite transactions
Yeah, no doubt.
in the Apple Store that there must be Apple must have been charging a cut.
No doubt about that.
And I think they've was it the story that they've dragged Epic have dragged Steam into the conversation as well, or the case because I think they probably asked Steam to present information around how its store works probably.
It sounds absolutely messy, but,
Yeah.
But these are multi-million, multi-billion kind of entities now. So like
Mm.
people are gonna fight for it. They're not gonna bend over and take it if you know what I mean. There's no way.
Yeah.
The more I think about this whole services thing, what Microsoft are doing, obviously what Sony are doing, right? I do think right people are being quite narrow in their view of Game Pass. Yeah.
Mm.
you take it as a service versus service
Yep.
matchup,
Yep.
whatever we want to call it, fight, fisticuffs, duel
Yeah.
to the death, right? The reality is, unless Sony decide to give up their first party IP to Game Pass,
hmm
it's less of a factor than people realize, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by extension, the chances of Games Pass driving, let's say, users, gamers away from PlayStation are
Mm.
also more limited than people might realize.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
reality is, I can drop my PlayStation because I want to play, I don't know, Elder Scrolls or whatnot, or Starfield,
Mm.
but I still can't play Uncharted, I still can't play God of War, and that's actually what I play on my PlayStation. So
Yeah.
why do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, why don't I just get a PC? Why?
Yeah.
I mean,
Indeed.
not right now, obviously, because that'll, you'll pay double the amount for what you would normally do. But maybe sometime in
Yeah.
the future, who knows, right?
That is the thing, right? These exclusives. I remember when I had. It must have been the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
Actually, I think at that stage I also had the Wii, so I had all three on that generation, right? So it was the PlayStation, the Wii, and then I got myself an Xbox 360 because I wanted to play the new Gears that had come out. So, that's the main game I kind of went for, and then obviously did the Xbox exclusives, right? You just went and bought Forza and all those sorts of games, and you played those, and you played the Halos. But you could, you'd get it, and you'd get it later when you wanted to play those games.
You know what? If there was one question I'd ask Phil Spencer,
Hmm.
after a few drinks, of course, I needed to pluck up the courage. I'd say to him, Phil, do you know what? With Games Pass being what it is, whose lunch do you really think you're eating?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I think the lunch that he's really going to be eating, certainly in the short term, is
Mm.
Steam, Epic, people like that.
Mm. Well, it is. It is. It is. It's basically anyone that's contemplating renting instead of owning.
Yeah.
It's an upfront cost versus overtime rental cost, of
Yeah,
which you
yeah.
can also drop it anytime you want. It's the same with cars nowadays. You can a lot of cars you can just go and lease nowadays rather than
Yeah,
actually
yeah, of
having to
course.
purchase and own it. So.
Yeah. But Games Pass right now doesn't have any of Sony's first party exclusives. So whose lunch are you really eating? I can tell you it's not necessarily Sony's lunch, though you will make an impact, there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first group of people on the menu is not necessarily
Yeah.
Sony. Do you
But
know what I mean?
that's why I think the target audience for these game passes just feels like very unique sets, which will then actually give you more people that are tied into your system and platform a bit more. I think it's families of people that are sharing the console that is probably doing most of this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out and to see really what I think Microsoft's roadmap and
Mm.
long-term vision, for this is. It's because listen, it can't be a small investment for
Yeah.
Microsoft. It's no small undertaking. Getting all these publishers on board. ZeniMax was a huge amount of money
Mm.
paid for that set of studios. So it's not a small thing. I don't at all believe that Microsoft couldn't do this for as long as they wanted to, and maybe not indefinitely, but for a long time.
Yeah.
They couldn't stump up the bill to keep this going for a long time.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you look at the numbers now, I think Sony, in terms of the gaming space, are basically got double the amount of revenue.
Mm. Mm.
I recently saw some numbers, and it was something like 25 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Microsoft was less than half of that. It'd be interesting to see how those numbers go up or down. If it goes down, right, you realise that kind of Game Pass was actually a stupidly expensive endeavour. You know.
Maybe. Again, I think it depends on. Or you need people on the consoles or on the PC to utilize it, and there has to be the right audience that wants to utilize it.
Yeah, but you've also got to pay these other publishers and developers
Mm.
an upfront cost. You're basically taking away royalties from them.
Yep.
They're not going to get now, and I'm just kind of interested to see how do you calculate something along those lines. Do you know what I mean? Or you just throw
With a
stupid
lot
sum
of
money
lawyers having.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it's kind of like how do you estimate that? And like what is enough? You know, what is enough?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's a strange one because it's like, are they able to purchase? It feels like a piece of software, concurrent licenses or something, and how many users are using that service and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what
maybe
the
or
legalities are on the
they could
license.
like
Yeah.
band it and say, look, if somebody pays this game off our service X amount of times, then we'll give you this much, and they could literally do that.
Yeah.
Again, that's no small thing, right? And
Yeah.
when you think about the subscription itself, it's not a big subscription, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So you could even think about chopping that subscription down and kind of
Yep.
like distributing it out. I mean, you're talking about like fractions of a penny or something stupid like that.
Mm. Mm.
So that equally,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but this is why I think they need to change the groupings of the things that they offer. Because like I'm sure one of the downsides of these game subscription services, because it's so cheap, in all likelihood you're not going to get the brand new AAA release on day one. That's what it would feel like.
Well, on Game Pass they are, obviously.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
That's the thing, Al.
Mm.
Game Pass is the kind of AAA title, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
There's no, we're gonna sell the next kind of Elder Scrolls, and after 6 months it comes on Games Pass. It's
Mm.
day one. This is on Games
Yeah.
Pass. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So only available on Game
Not
Pass.
only,
Yeah.
but available on Games Pass day one as part of
Yeah.
your subscription. So
Mm-hmm.
why the hell would you buy it from Steam, Epic, or anywhere else? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, well, why
Mm.
isn't anybody talking about this? It's kind of like, the more I think about this, the more I feel, is Sony actually losing any sleep over this?
I can't imagine they would.
I'm not actually sure they are. The people who should be losing sleep over this are the more traditional kind of digital game stores.
Mm. Yeah, because it'll be less people purchasing on the stores.
Yeah, right.
If they think they can blast through it from renting it,
Yeah, right.
then great,
Yeah.
do that.
And unless the model that Microsoft are employing is fair to these other publishers and developers, and I think I'm pretty sure it is, they will also be losing out.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
they will also be losing out because obviously Microsoft will not want to necessarily overpay. Yeah, they run a business,
yep,
so
yep,
it's interesting how generous they've been or how controlled they've been with that.
yep,
And how do you distribute the wealth when you're basically building up this service? You're onboarding more and more and more games. Yeah, let's be
yep.
honest. There's only so many gamers in the world, right? Even if they wiped kind of like PlayStation out and they took those
Mm.
100 million or so gamers, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Let's be generous. I mean, in console terms, 200 million. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
the maths still need to stack up, really.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
That's where it's actually quite interesting, I think. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm glad they're doing something like this because anything that's disruptive is good. And like I said, I mean, it feels like Sony have taken note. They probably don't feel they've been put on notice or anything like that. They probably
yeah,
think, okay, well, you guys are doing that, so we'll have to do something like this.
yeah. We'll just give away some more games.
Yeah, correct. We're just gonna look after our PlayStation owners. That's the
Yeah,
name of the game.
yeah.
So. But anyway, interesting conversation. Let's see how this develops. It's for me, it's
Indeed.
still early days. But if this event, if this kind of acquisition that Microsoft are undertaking drives, a lot of disruption, competition, that's only a good thing. We're gonna,
Mm.
the gamers will win. So there you go.
Yep, yep.
Okay, I think with that said, it's time to kind of move on to our next topic. So our next topic is really a roundup of AMD, Nvidia, and Intel in 2021 so far.
Yep.
And to be honest, I think I got to start with Intel. You know what I mean? Like, and
Mm.
I mean, my opinion, and I think a lot of other tech tubers, tech press, is that Intel, for as huge and as important as they are literally on the back foot.
Mm.
sleeping giant. They've been pedestrian for too long. They're on the
Yeah.
back foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and even the early reviews of the new chips haven't been great from what I can tell.
Intel have come out with quite a bit of news, so it feels like they've been, really provoked into some sort of film action finally. They've broken out of whatever medically induced coma they were in.
Hmm.
They've smelt the danger, and we've seen a lot of activity the last month from them. So what have we seen? We've seen Rocket Lake.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so that's their new range of CPUs. We've got leaks or information, I should say leaks and information about their Alder Lake architecture, which I believe is coming, the CPU architecture, I should say, which is coming out close to the end of the year. I think Q4
Mhm.
2021.
Mhm.
There have also been leaks, I believe, on the Intel Z range of graphics,
Mm.
their discrete graphics
Yeah.
offering.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think DG2, I think DG1
Yeah.
already is available in some Tiger Lake laptops.
Mhm. Mhm.
For something like that, it's a low,
Yeah.
a low powered component. Really, just competes with Nvidia MX
Yeah.
range of kind of like GPUs.
Yeah, and actually they've done quite well. If you remember back to the Steam stats, I think Intel, UHD kind of in onboard graphics cards are part of that list. I'm going to bring up the stats whilst we continue through it, but I'll dig out what percentage they were. But I remember it being quite high.
So Rocket Lake is available March 30th. That's my
Hmm.
information. It's a 14 nm FinFET node, so obviously it's not 10 nm.
Hmm.
A new chip, I believe it's a new chipset and it's a new socket.
Hmm.
Actually, no. When I say new socket, it's still on the LGA 1200, which is the last socket.
Hmm. Hmm.
Supports DDR4 up
Hmm.
to 3200 megahertz. Finally introduces PCI 4.
Hmm.
And basically, core-wise, we're talking about a maximum of 8 cores, 16 threads. And what they've done is basically backported this thing called Cypress Cove that was designed, I think, for 10 nm,
Hmm.
and they've backported that to 14 nm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Performance-wise, max boost 5.2 gigahertz and a
Yeah.
claimed 19% IPC gain. Versus what I don't know. Yeah, that's the other thing. Versus what?
Yeah, that's their marketing number.
Yeah, but it's not insignificant. Not insignificant.
Yeah.
It actually has a new integrated Z GPU,
Yeah.
on board. So,
I mean
that's not bad.
yeah, integrated and onboard graphics and APUs now are, they're getting really, really good. And as I was saying earlier, that this Intel UHD graphics is on Steam's February stats at 1%, right next to the Radeon 5700 XT. So about number 16 to 20-ish in that range. So it's quite popular. Um,
Yeah. I mean, it'll be
yeah.
one of these things that users will have, users will really forget about, if you know what I mean. It's just there,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow my PC's running games. I don't know how it's doing it, how the graphics are, being
Yeah.
rendered, but there it is.
It runs smooth enough. It manages to just run this game.
Yeah,
It works.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But on Rocket Lake, what I understand so far is the reception's been a bit lukewarm.
Mm.
I think there was this early, and I think it was on the Alan Tech website
Hmm.
review. I mean, weirdly, someone managed to basically buy the chip before the
Oh, yeah, that's right. They were being shipped around, weren't they? And
yeah,
people
yeah,
were able to get their hands on it. Yeah.
yeah. They reviewed it, and the actual results were very lukewarm.
Yeah.
I mean, it
And
was at
kind of not
best,
surprising.
yeah,
Yeah.
at best, and I'm being generous here. It was the equal of Zen 3, and in many cases just being outperformed by it.
And that's the thing. I think this is the 10 nanometer, 7 nanometer problem, right? And now AMD has
Well, this thing's
yeah,
not
perform
even
the
10
yeah.
nanometer, Al. It's actually
Oh,
on
is it
their
not?
aged 14 nanometer. But they basically took a core design they had originally intended for 10 nm and backported it onto
Right.
14 nm.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's kind of like, not a good. Well, I don't know about not a good look. I mean, I think Intel have to do something.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is that they've been behind on their sort of stuff, and even whatever new stuff that they were releasing, because AMD is progressing at such a pace and improving even just efficiency on on their existing chips, you are going to eventually, fall behind completely. Now, whether enthusiasts, people that do some research, will know based on obviously YouTube videos and other things to not go for an Intel chip after a certain point. But there'll still be mass market people that that will have no clue and you will just be continuing to purchase Intel because that's the thing that they've known
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
brand.
It's mind share, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's I don't know what to say about Rocket Lake really, other than I'm kind of disappointed that it doesn't seem to do more.
I'm not surprised
Yeah, but
though.
that's the
This
thing
is the
is, I'm
thing.
not surprised either. I'm actually not surprised. I'm not surprised it is what it is. I mean, at least they got PCIe 4 there. I
Mm.
mean, couldn't have gone another generation of chips without it, surely. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But the interesting thing with PCIe 4 is that even graphics cards, I think many of the sort of tech outlets have already kind of reviewed it and said you don't really need PCIe 4. If anything, you're probably taking advantage of your SSD cards.
Yeah, it's all storage. The main benefit of PCIe 4 now is storage.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need it for graphics because obviously the GPUs aren't really saturating it.
Yep. Yep.
But who knows? Maybe if one day this pipe dream of 8K becomes real, that it might have a chance of it.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, yeah, Rocket Lake. So
Mm.
lukewarm. Plus, it only goes up to 8 cores.
Yeah.
I guess again a side effect of
Yeah.
being on 14 nm.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of Intel felt they had a need to basically release
Yeah.
something and
And what?
try and compete.
Yeah. Yeah. And whilst on the topic of lukewarm, I think you the AMD the RX 6700 has
Yeah,
also got
let's
a
get to
very
that in a
lukewarm
minute, right?
reception.
Yeah, that's definitely lukewarm. But I'll tell you what isn't lukewarm.
Mm.
What isn't lukewarm is Intel's next CPU,
Mm-hmm,
Alder Lake. And
mm-hmm.
now this one is actually, I think, really, if you're such a aim, not sorry, if you're such a Intel fanboy that
Uh-huh.
you won't buy any other kind of chip, right? Plus, right, given the timelines for this chip coming out, we hopefully will be past the situation with supply and demand. Hopefully, pricing may reduce and stabilize a little bit.
I don't know. For us in Europe, whilst the Suez Canal is blocked up, I think
Yeah, well,
we might be waiting for a bit longer.
yeah, there is that also. But this might be the chip to get if you're looking for a new Intel CPU. This thing's finally on 10 nm.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new kind of chipset, which means a new motherboard. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's the downside of it. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
a new socket. So obviously a new
Yeah.
motherboard. It supports DDR4
Yeah.
plus DDR5.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's clocked up to 4,800 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
PCI 4 N5.
Yep.
Wi-Fi 6E Thunderbolt 4, that is USB 4 compliant, and also really quick USB 3, 20 gigabits per second.
Mm.
Has a big little configuration, up to I think 16 cores, 8 by 8, which I mean 8 big, 8 small, or
Mm-hmm.
16 and 8, which is 16 core plus
Yeah.
8 single-threaded little cores.
Yeah.
Cores, golden coal for the big cores,
Mm-hmm.
and Gracemont for the small, which are derived
Mm-hmm.
from Atom CPUs, if you remember those things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
20% increase in IPC compared to, again, I don't know what. Yeah. And they're claiming 2 times the multi-threaded performance. And I think what's actually quite interesting, right, is it's got this thing called, well, what they put in their kind of notes were hardware guided scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
What I understand, the way it works now when you got these multi-core CPUs, right? What happens with the tasks and processes you're running is that the OS will direct which core it goes to.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can imagine the kind of parameters it uses. It will be sometimes it'll be you can imagine it'll be a mix between going round robin versus how busy a core is if they couldn't even measure that. But it's that sort of thing. But all the
Yeah.
cores are the same size. With
Mm-hmm.
this new CPU, because they've got a big little configuration, that's not necessarily true, right? You're not going to want
Mm.
certain workloads to be running on those small cores. So this is why I think this hardware guided scheduling works. No,
Mm.
I should say this is why this hardware guided scheduling exists
Yeah.
to solve that problem, to make sure the right sized workloads are going to the right cores, rather than
Mm.
relying on the operating system.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
big little, so not all the cores are the same, not equal.
Yeah. It's good that they've got that kind of config because I think there was one of those questions that was also raised on some of the AMD multi-core setup is that you get different, was it sort of reliability and quality of the actual core that's in there, and actually some of them then you can only boost clock to a certain level.
Yeah. That's true. It's the silicon. It's the again
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
our silicon lottery thing. I
Mm,
mean, even with some of the AMD software, they give you I can't even remember what it's called now, but they give you software that allows you to overclock it. They'll actually
mm.
tell you what your best core is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
so they do all of that. But that's not quite like having a big little configuration
Mm,
because
mm,
whilst you have your best kind of like big core and your worst,
mm.
it's still comparable.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas the big little configuration in this in this scenario, it's not comparable at all. You
Mm,
know,
mm, mm.
one's based on a really low powered Atom core,
Yeah,
one isn't. Yeah,
yeah,
and one's multi-threaded, one isn't.
yeah.
So it's slightly it's I don't know when I say slightly on paper it looks it's slightly different.
Yeah, but it's like having two types of chips in the same chip, right? It's
Yeah,
just saying
yeah.
that you've got one that can handle some
Yeah.
basic simple workload,
Mm.
and doesn't matter how quickly you handle it as long as it's done in the most efficient way. And then it reduces, I guess, the amount of power that's being generated, and then the
Yeah.
cooling solution that you need
Yeah.
for it. So
Correct.
it's all
Correct.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. But if your OS isn't basically aware,
Mm. Mm.
it could cause all sorts of havoc.
Yep.
You imagine running Cyberpunk on some of these little cores. I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be worse than it is. Like at
It
launch.
would
You know what
load
I
up
mean?
and
Like,
quickly panic.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I found that quite interesting. I think,
Mm.
certainly if you're an absolute Intel fanboy, Alder Lake seems to be the chip to get. Now,
Hmm.
I feel kind of a bit more. When I say a bit confident, I feel confident of the possibility
Yeah.
that Alder Lake could outperform Zen 3. I'm choosing my words very carefully, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously, Intel have got to come out with a good product. That's
Yep.
the
Yep. Yep.
reality,
Yep.
right? And they haven't done in a while, right? So I just feel like, looking at the information, this CPU has a chance.
On paper, it makes a lot
On
of
paper,
sense.
on paper, it makes a lot of sense, absolutely. Now, whether it does it or not, well, that's
Mm.
that's totally how kind of Intel. That's totally down to Intel executing.
Yeah.
But again, I will maintain, how short-lived is that going to be? Because Zen 4's coming out in the new year,
AMD's
and it got
right behind it again. It's just like they're literally just chasing them.
yeah. Well, they're not chasing them. They're the ones being chased now.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
the ones being chased now. So
AMD's got the lead for
yeah.
sure, right?
But are AMD stupid enough to stand still for even one basic generation? And
No.
for the sake of competition, I hope they're not, because I mean, if you look at this right now, I think AMD they're showing signs of being a little bit. I wouldn't call it complacent, but
Mm.
they know they're at the top. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these things they used to do to basically get themselves to the top, they're stopped.
Yeah.
I know price is basically a silly thing to bring up. Let's just say the world was at a place where MSRP meant something. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
right? If you look at it from that perspective, right? Doesn't feel like AMD mind being expensive, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, but it's just like, well, it's how should I say it's basic supply and demand, right?
Of course, of
If
course,
there's not enough supply and demand's high, then guess what? Prices go up.
of
That
course, of
is just
course.
fundamentally what happens. And
Yeah,
if
of
people
course.
keep buying at those high inflated prices anyway, why should they reduce it?
Yeah, of
Why should they even sell it at MSRP?
yeah, of course, of course.
And if I could buy it on MSRP, why can't I just sell that particular thing straight back onto the market at the inflated price? So, and this is exactly the what's happening.
But could we get to a point where Intel are so desperate to get back, right?
Hmm.
They become the actual company who offer the
The
best
more value
price,
proposition.
yeah, the more value and the more better price performance. Because that would be a real interesting reversal of
Hmm.
roles, if you know what I mean.
Maybe it may be the thing that it needs to build the confidence back in, into that option, and
Yeah,
then maybe that is maybe that is a thing that they could go after.
yeah, definitely. But look, if you're into your Intel chips, your Intel CPUs, all the late's coming out close to the end of the year, that will be the CPU to, I think, consider.
Hmm.
Intel still have to prove it, they still have to execute on their plan, and until they do that, who knows what's going to be kind of produced. But on paper, that looks like the one
Yeah.
to get.
Yeah.
And hopefully that keeps pushing AMD to deliver. Yeah, because we want a good Zen 4, right? We don't want a shit Zen 4.
Yeah.
We don't want a tiny iteration or evolution Zen 4. We want something that's decent.
Yeah.
Because then Intel are going to have to double their efforts and chase even harder. And if they become a threat, AMD should be looking over their shoulder and saying, you know what? I can't take any bloody risks here. These guys are chasing hard,
Yeah.
We need to push. So we've talked about Intel
A
quite a
lot.
bit,
Yeah.
and yeah, I will say one thing before we move on from Intel, that their ZDG2
Hmm.
GPUs are maybe not gonna beat the high end
Yeah.
AMD and Nvidia GPUs, but they actually might be actually quite comparable
Hmm.
to middle or kind of lower end. And if they can do one thing, and the one thing is make sure the cards are available and priced sensibly,
Hmm.
right? That's all they actually need to do. Parking aside kind of specs and performance, they could be in with a shot here.
Could be. I mean, if there's more people that want, if you argue if they're going after entry level market, then there's a possibility there.
Yeah, I mean, the one advantage Intel have had with their 14nm node
Hmm.
is that it's actually available.
Hmm.
There's a lot of supply versus, other companies.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
If they can take those lessons learned for this graphics card and just assume it comes out like later in this year, we're probably going to still have some of these problems that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
They could basically get a foot in the door in this GPU market, and again drive some competition up.
Yeah.
Because obviously now AMD, Nvidia, they're sparring with one another. Intel enters the market again, does something a bit more disruptive. Who knows?
Yeah.
That can only be good for us.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other lukewarm topic aside from Rocket Lake.
Yeah.
And that lukewarm topic was the latest AMD
Yeah.
6700 XT
Yeah.
graphics card. Al, what I understood about these graphics cards were that they were positioned to compete with the 3070.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were a little cheaper,
Yeah.
and I think they were cheaper by about MSRP anyway,
Yeah.
$20,
Yeah.
something along those lines. Not so an awful lot. The reality is, looking at the specs and the reviews and the benchmarks, is that they're actually comparable. They are comparable, but they lose in the performance and benchmark stakes most of the time.
Yeah.
If they exist to be a replacement for the 5700 XT, and I think you've got one,
Yeah,
haven't you?
that's the one I've got. Yeah, 5700 XT.
It's actually priced $80 or so more. I think the 57 was $400
Yeah.
or so.
Of which I got at actual MSRP back then.
Yeah, of course. Real MSRP. So in many ways, it's lukewarm in terms of value. It's kind of lukewarm in terms of performance.
Yeah, the problem is that I guess the tech reviewers that have gone through it says Well, the problem is we've done all these charts. It's okay, but 3070 still seems to be more value for your frames. So why would you get this thing? And then actually, is the MSRP even real? So it's just like, well,
Well, no, it isn't.
even if yeah, exactly. So even if the MSRP is real, it still didn't look favorable. It looked like 3070s were still better in terms of price per frame.
This is the one thing that I genuinely cannot understand with AMD. Yeah,
Mm,
that their price performance,
mm.
yeah, is just not good for somebody.
Not the current generation,
Yeah,
not the 6000
yeah,
generation. For some reason, it just isn't there.
yeah.
But
It's just
but
not
that's
good.
why I did the 5000, yeah, the 5700 XT and the 5700, and even the 5600 XT. Their value proposition was very, very good, and it just made a lot of people jumped in for that. I did. You just like it all added up perfectly because AMD's new chips were going really well, and then same with the graphics card. So I just jumped onto it, and then built a new machine from it.
But this is the stupid thing. Yeah,
Mm,
with the CPUs, I can actually understand why the price performance would have dropped down because
mm,
AMD are now top of the heap, king of the hill, whatever it is.
yeah,
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 logically, they can do that. With
yeah.
the GPUs, to me, I mean, look, I mean, maybe I'm being unfair here, right?
Mm,
I did actually put out a video about this, but and where I was a little bit kinder,
mm, yeah,
yeah. But really, RDNA 2 is really more like a Zen Plus moment.
yeah. That's what it kind of feels
Yeah,
like. It's not really pushed us that much further forward,
yeah,
and then maybe the reviewers haven't taken well, maybe they have to be neutral around the fact that they're not using an AMD chip to take advantage of the additional stuff, the additional advantages of a full AMD setup,
it wouldn't
and
get
things like
you
that.
as
Yeah.
it wouldn't get you that much, I think.
Mm,
Not
mm,
it
mm,
wouldn't be able to necessarily close the gap on some of the deficits we're seeing. But
mm.
this is yeah, I just can't understand it. I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, RDNA 2 is it comparable for rasterization? Yes, but maybe at
Yeah.
4K it's not as good. In
Hmm,
some of the
hmm.
lower resolutions, it's actually better.
Yeah.
Is it as good in terms of ray tracing? Nowhere near.
No.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Mm,
Nowhere near. Though we have seen the consoles do quite well for what they have.
yeah.
And equally, you might say in the PC area, how many ray trace games do we have?
Mm, 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 mm.
Does it have a DLSS like alternative? No, clearly
Well,
no.
I think they do, but it's just nowhere near as good.
Not out. They don't even have it now. It's not coming out until they say it's this year, but no one knows.
Mhm, mhm,
And they say it's still being. There was an interview recently with I think it was Scott Herkerman, who's
mhm,
the GPU guy at Nvidia. Sorry, AMD. Yeah,
mhm.
and he kind of said that it was going to come out this year, but he also said they were just looking at the different alternatives for implementing it.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a product that's basically going to come out anytime soon? We actually haven't decided how
No.
we're going to do it yet. Is
Mhm.
what came across.
Yeah. But we'll do
Yeah, we'll do it, but not quite yet.
it.
We're still deciding, right? So basically, hasn't got a comparable ray tracing performance, hasn't got basically a DLSS like alternative, which, to be honest, will be a factor soon, sooner or later. Yeah, will be a factor.
Yeah.
Has comparable rasterization performance, which is good, no doubt about that. So how in the world can they be pricing this thing as if it was a Zen 3 CPU, if you know what I mean?
I don't know. It's like the only other side of it is maybe they don't want to sell that many. Maybe there's I don't know what hidden reason there would be, but um,
As much as it's kind of tempting to want to believe that, I can't believe any company would think like that.
yeah, I create I'm a company that creates and designs graphics cards. Yeah, maybe I just won't sell that many of them.
Yeah, I mean it's quite curious, and obviously, I'm not wanting to spread some AMD hate here. Put some shade on what they're doing. But let's be honest. In other podcasts, we've given a lot of AMD love. You know what I mean? Like
True,
there's no
true,
doubt
true.
about it. But this seems kind of like objectively kind of stupid.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing. There's just nothing there that just warrants you wanting to jump on it versus the Nvidia offering. It just doesn't make any sense.
That is the problem. That is the problem. When you look at it on paper, and even when you don't consider the situation with MSRP, you think,
Mm.
well, what's the value of me picking this over that? It's a difficult one.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
but that's the thing. Maybe they are going after not selling as many, and it's just basically they have they've committed to their roadmap, and to their shareholders they are showing they are committed to their roadmap. But the shareholders probably don't understand
Yeah, but that
the actual value
yeah,
proposition.
maybe, but
Yeah.
surely now is not the time to be impacting your mind share.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it is a roadmap and there's a journey ahead, and they want to have their Zen free moment, yeah, this is not the best way to get it. Like
No.
by
Yeah.
by by pushing out products that have a
Yeah.
lower kind of price to performance.
It could also be that the CPU side has just got them thinking in a very different mentality, which is why the GPUs cost that much as
And
well.
there lies the danger. Yeah,
Yep.
there lies the danger, and this is why we need Intel to be really pushing the boat out the next CPUs, really pushing the boat out these new
Yep.
GPUs. We need Nvidia to carry on doing what they're doing, because I tell you, those guys aren't about being second best. Yeah, no way. Yeah, and we need basically AMD to take notice of this.
Mm.
There's no doubt the way they've been executing, what they've been producing is just basically stellar. It's been amazing. Yeah.
Mm.
But the moment they put they take their foot off that gas pedal is the moment like people like Intel are gonna basically catch up, and people like Nvidia are gonna keep on accelerating ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing here. For me, that's quite interesting. I mean, I just hope we don't see a real shift in kind of AMD's mentality. Their mindset is just too early for that change. I mean, you know,
Oh yeah.
turn into Intel. Turn
It
into
is.
Intel later when
Yeah.
the journey's over. Don't turn into Intel right now. You haven't earned the right to yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, I think that's the. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's much more to say about AMD. It was about their mid-range graphics cards, as much as I understood it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know Zen 4's coming. There might be a Zen 3 refresh, to combat kind of all late by the end of the year. I don't imagine that release will be seismic.
Yeah.
But let's talk briefly about Nvidia. And
Mm.
really, the one thing that I want to discuss about Nvidia is the whole crypto mining thing again. Yeah, I had to bring this up. I had to bring this up because
Yep.
I remember, right? We talked about this last podcast.
Yeah. I think all my predictions have come true
Yeah, I
on it.
know,
But yeah, keep going.
which is kind of disappointing, really, right? And in a way, right,
Mm.
one of my, I don't even want to call it predictions, but one thing that I kind of assumed, obviously, has evaporated, gone up in a puff of smoke. The other thing
Mm.
has absolutely come true, but that wasn't about
Mm.
technology.
No.
That was not about technology. So as people will know, right, the 3060 graphics cards have already been hacked by miners,
Yeah.
and I'm using the word hack very loosely here because it seemed that all that they needed to do was flash the video BIOS with a developer BIOS. It was like something that my 2-year-old daughter could have done, given enough training. Right now.
But that's what as soon as one or two of them have cracked it and then shared it, everyone else can replicate it and
Yeah.
do it.
But Al, the BIOS wasn't a special BIOS.
Yeah, but that was the whole problem. If they made it software based,
BIOS was an Nvidia BIOS. This is the part that, if I understand this right, that's the part that blows my mind. So let me understand it. Okay, Nvidia, let me understand this. Right? You put out some, news and some graphics cards that you said you were throttling. And not only did you say you were throttling this, but you said it was going to be very difficult for somebody to work around this. Yeah.
It was unhackable, I think
Unhackable.
was the
It was absolutely unhackable. And then maybe
Yes.
Nvidia, you didn't say this, but you kind of let it you kind of let people say about it. Oh, somebody's kind of said that you were going to save PC gamers. Yeah, you kind of said that, all right. You didn't necessarily explicitly say that, but you allowed the community to say that for you. So, thinking about this, you're right. It was unhackable, and the reason it was unhackable is all that you needed to do was just flash the BIOS with an existing kind of BIOS. You didn't need to hack it. So, so in many ways, it was unhackable because you didn't even need to
It
do
was
that.
easier than...
It was unhackable because you didn't even need to do it. So now we're in this situation. Not only have Nvidia released these crypto mining processes, right, for the miners, but they've actually also released a bunch of, 3060 graphics cards, which are seemingly for the miners also.
Yeah.
So you don't even have two. They don't even have two segments here. They have just one big segment. Yeah, it's just that
Yeah,
one you have to flash the BIOS, and the other one you don't.
it probably depends on the. Again, I don't know. I've not seen what the MSRPs are on the CMP kind of processes, but it depends on the cost really. Ultimately, this is the whole point. The whole point of why it's so popular at the moment is that it has become cost efficient to do Ethereum mining, and that's why everyone's going after it, because they're sensing this kind of loop of free money essentially, and that's
Yeah.
why they're doing it.
Well, I mean, I think I did kind of read one article on the MSRP, and I think it was this probably was the lowest end CMP. It was
Hmm.
the 30HX,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and the actual gaming equivalent that it was compared to, it ended up as being $200 to $300 more.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
okay. But right now, obviously, that's not a factor.
Yeah.
The miners, you can have it all. You have no limits.
Yeah,
If you can
yeah,
get hold of the cards and you're willing to spend the money, you can have it all.
yeah.
And this whole unhackable thing, to a degree, it's accurate because you don't need to hack anything. You can just go in there, you can basically kind of flash the BIOS, and you're good to go.
Yeah, wasn't there also another, I think I read an article somewhere that someone was also able to do something with a video. I think they could just add on to the video output that also broke it
Yeah.
as well.
Yep. Yep. I heard that as well. So really, you got more than one route to take. Whatever works for you, miners. Whatever works for you. In fact, I don't know why you just don't basically hire a massive fleet of trucks, put your graphics cards in the back of them, get the addresses for all the miners, and just ship them to them. Why bother? Why bother with this masquerade? Saying all of this.
Yep, yep.
I think that's the part that I really was just kind of quite shocked about the ease by which this was circumvented. I just thought you never ever think anything's bulletproof, yeah. You never ever
Yeah.
think that,
Well, it's the classic Titanic thing, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
unsinkable.
of course. But equally, you don't expect your Kevlar vest to have the tensile strength of paper. Do you know what I mean? Not even cardboard, paper. You know, that's the part that I kind of thought to myself, wow, this is actually this is amazing. And I
Uh,
think, Al, before I rant anymore and get myself permanently in Nvidia's kind of like shitbooks, just in case anybody's listening to this, I think it's time to move on to the next topic.
yeah, cool.
So the next topic for discussion is got to be VR.
Mm.
PSVR 2 has been
Yeah.
announced. Basically, there was an event, absolutely no frills. It was literally a
Hmm.
PlayStation blog post.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we know Sony still invested in VR, which
Yeah.
for me I think is a good thing.
Mm.
You want a company like Sony to be invested in VR because basically you want VR to have a future.
Yeah.
That's per me anyway. I mean, like I'm a fan of VR, so
Yeah.
I want it to have a future. So my real experience of VR really is the first PlayStation VR,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I can hand on heart say that when I can basically be bothered to set up and put on the VR headset, right, and use it, that it's like it feels like an experience like no other.
Mm. Mm.
Even if the PSVR graphics fidelity wasn't really comparable to some of the higher end kind of headsets, it is an experience like no other.
Mm. Mm.
Playing I think there was a Star Wars
Like a demo type one, I remember. Yeah.
yeah, it was part of the Battlefront or whatever it was called,
Yeah.
Star Wars game, yeah.
The one with the loot boxes.
Yeah, the loot boxes, and I can tell you that that was an experience like no other. I'm
Mm.
obviously as a Star Wars fan, you know, sat inside an X-wing in virtual reality. I'm doing my kind of like air quotes now. Yeah, experience like no other. Brilliant,
Yeah.
I would say. And there was quite a
Yeah.
few experiences like that. Fully immersive. I actually felt the speed for a lot of these games. Felt that basically, jumping on big heights, dropping down big heights. I felt every meter. Yeah. And absolutely, in awe of some of the technology. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, no doubt
Yeah.
about that.
It definitely adds to the immersion, right? I got the PSVR as well, and it was awesome. I played stuff like Wipeout,
Yeah.
a lot on Wipeout, Skyrim VR actually a little bit, but it got a bit too janky for me because it was like the movement was teleportation rather than anything.
Yeah, I heard that about
Um,
that.
yeah, there's some other really good ones like Creed was really good as well. It's like a boxing one
Mm.
that kind of gets you going. Super Hot, Beat Saber, those sorts of games. They were really,
Yeah.
some really, really good games.
Res Infinite,
Mm,
Rigs.
mm,
I mean, Sony have done really quite well out of content.
yeah,
And
yeah.
one thing I will say about PSVR 2, I do hope it's fully backwards compatible
Yeah,
because they have got a wealth of content for the first VR
Y-
headset that they should
yeah.
absolutely, make sure can be kind of leveraged by the
Y-
new one.
You would hope so. It'd be interesting to see what they do. Is I was lucky at the time to already have had the Move controllers,
Yeah,
so all I had to
same
do was
here,
just buy the headset. So and
same
I
here.
think maybe a new camera or something, and that was the only thing that I needed.
Yeah,
Um, and then yeah, so it was a really good entry level setup to kind
yeah,
of get
yeah,
in.
absolutely, and that's what it was designed to be. Yeah,
Mm,
that's what it was designed to be. I mean, Sony managed to basically leverage a lot of their legacy products,
mm,
melded it together, and they got a VR offering. But I do
yeah,
think the next VR two, sorry, the next PSVR is going to be a much more complete and up to date offering.
mm,
Whether it's going to be as value for money, I don't know.
yeah. When I saw the initial rumors, and this was a long time ago, so I've not seen the recent stuff, even with the announcements, etc. Was stuff around like wireless connectivity and things like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
which is a huge bugbear for all kind of existing kind of VR headsets. Is these big ass cables
yeah,
tying you to a specific spot,
yeah,
and not making sure you don't trip over yourself whilst playing in the VR world.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about some of this.
Mm,
The first PSVR. Let's face it. Yeah, was a configuration setup nightmare. Yeah,
mm,
the amount of cables, the external setup box for video and 3D audio was an absolute nightmare to deal with. Yeah,
yep.
and it's one of the reasons that I if I basically unplugged it, it would take me an awful long time to set it up again because I just didn't want to go through all of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're right about having a wireless headset would be the perfect thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the perfect thing. I think what people were really trying to do here, and I said this again, I kind of made a video about this again. I keep plugging my videos, but anyway, yeah. It really should be about having something that you can pick up like you would do really any controller.
Mm. Mm.
Because it's not just about being wireless. It's not about just necessarily the cables and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's
Mm.
about walking up to the device, plonking it on your head, and going.
But I think that's why if it was wireless with the correct connectivity, the right amount of bandwidth to be able to, because you know what, these are really high definition displays on both eyes. So there's two signals that need to be sent in order to reflect a VR world, and that's why they need those big, thick cables. Because even HDMI probably couldn't handle it. That's why they had to create a custom kind of own
You got
connector.
to also render both images as well.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
so let's talk about the VR2 then, and also
Mm.
these other kind of higher end PC VR headsets out there.
Mm.
So what's been disclosed about PSVR 2? It's going to be wired. Let's get that out there. It's
Mm-hmm,
going to be
mm-hmm.
wired. It's going to have obviously better resolution. They're going to look at it ergonomically. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
going to improve the tracking. They're going to do all those sorts of things. And obviously, behind it, they've also got a console with much more grunt, much
Mm.
more power.
Mm.
And I think also with some very specific customizations to work with VR. For
Mm.
instance, like the geometry engine
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
allows you to cull primitives. So in effect, you're basically pushing less out, or you're doing less to get the same results. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Al, I actually don't think it being wired is a terrible thing.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I'm still fine with it being wired.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things I think I saw on a leaked spec originally that they had something that had a wireless connection.
Yeah. I actually thought to myself, as like you, that if it was wireless, it would be the best thing. It would be the most convenient
Mm-hmm.
thing. Yeah. But then I kind of thought about what upset me most about PSVR 1. Of course, the
Yeah.
wires. But then we had to have a camera.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. There's a camera there. There's a bloody camera specifically for this
But
thing.
was it
Yeah.
probably? It's probably more for the Move controllers, I reckon.
No, because remember you had those
Was
lights
it? Oh
around
yeah.
your thing.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah. True.
tracking all
True.
of that.
True.
It
True.
was
True.
tracking all
True.
of
True.
that. It
True.
was tracking all of that. Yeah. You had this breakout box also that was there to process 3D
Mm.
audio, and there was also this capability. You would be in-game in your
Yeah.
VR headset, but maybe your friend would be watching you on
Yeah.
screen.
The
So
separate hardware box. Yeah.
yeah, did that. Yeah, and then you'd be basically having pass-through cables going from HDMI and all that nonsense. It was an absolute nightmare. I've said that already. Great experience, but setting up,
Mm.
my God, what a nightmare. So for me, having one cable going to the PS5, and it's going to be this USB-C,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
absolutely fine. And the reason I say USB-C, as well as this USB-C connector being at the front
Yeah.
of the PS5 anyway, is that there was this standard called Virtual
Mm.
Link for PC graphics cards
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that worked off USB-C that allowed you to connect your VR headset via one cable.
Mm.
And obviously these PC VR headsets are quite high end,
Yeah.
so obviously a much higher
Yeah.
resolution. Yeah, into the back of the graphics card. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Mm.
If they could just have one
It's an
cable,
improvement. Yeah.
it's a massive improvement.
Yeah.
Dude, it's a massive
Yeah.
improvement.
Yeah. And on the topic of VR headsets, I have started looking at the PC ones because, with the laptop that I've recently purchased as well, I was thinking it'd be quite nice to take really push it to some of its limits as well with some VR games, because I did purchase a while back things like Elite Dangerous that would be quite nice to play in kind of a VR setting.
I think a lot of the PC headsets are still wired. I
Yeah,
think there's
there was
one or two that are not.
it's the recent Facebook one, the Quest or something, Oculus Quest. but it requires you to sign up to have a Facebook account active or something.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
some
There's all
there's some
sorts of
restrictions
quirks
on it,
like
yeah.
that.
And it's
Yeah,
actually really, when I looked at the price, even on Amazon right now, it's actually quite well discounted.
it's about $300,
It's yeah,
$400
it was
standalone headset.
£240 when I could see it online,
Yeah,
so I was
it's the
half
Quest
tempted.
2, isn't it? But I'm actually, going back to the whole wireless kind of situation. I'm actually not sorry it's not
Mm,
wireless
mm.
because at least it's going to be reliable.
True, because
Yeah,
rather than playing with a wireless technology
yeah,
to prove it can actually
yeah,
handle. Mm,
yeah. Absolutely. I don't think wireless technology is there yet for that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Not pushing that amount of data. So I'm glad it's wired.
yeah.
The other thing is, you could probably offer a wireless option, a paid for wireless option as
Mm,
an add-on. And the reason I say that is there's the HTC
mm-hmm,
Cosmos. It's a PC based VR headset. Came out in 2019. Quite
yeah.
high end. It's also
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
wired,
mm-hmm.
but you have an option to add wireless to it
Oh,
if you want.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, you can do it. So it's an option. But you know what? I think a single wire would be a
yeah.
step forward. You know, because I think what Sony should really focus on more than the hardware specs, more than the resolution, even the field of view and the refresh
Mm,
rate, is really ease of use
yeah.
and barrier to that thing being used every single day
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that you have it. If they can crack that, they've got a mass market
Yeah,
product.
yeah,
Yeah. If they can't crack that you need a degree in engineering to use the bloody thing, then forget about
yeah,
it. VR will basically stay in the dark ages.
yeah,
They've literally got to have something that you can walk up to and put in your head, switch on the PlayStation, and you're done.
yeah.
Yeah? Nothing else. That's what I think really the focus should be this generation. Because you know what, Al? I can basically accept, right, lower fidelity graphics. I can accept, lower refresh rates. I
Mm,
can accept not the best, field of
mm,
view. But I just can't accept it being such a drama to put on a VR headset. That's
mm.
what's going to stop me using it. It's not going to be the resolution and all that other stuff. It's going to be how much effort is it going to take me to put this headset on
Yeah.
and play something? How immediate is it?
Mm.
If it takes me 15 minutes
But
just to configure the damn
yeah,
thing, put on a headset and get into game, I'm not going to
but this
bloody
is where
use
it's
it.
interesting, right? Because you could, I think, for the first initial sort of wireless versions of these VR headsets, I think they will have to drop the fidelity. But then I think there's a danger there that I mean we were probably lucky that the PlayStation VR and a lot of the VR, the more recent VRs, have been to a level of decent frame rate as well as decent level of fidelity that allows you to not get motion sick. Because as soon as you start slowing that stuff down and you start reducing the fidelity, I suspect the chances of motion sickness from playing these games will increase.
Yeah. I think it's more about the refresh rate
Mm,
more than
mm,
anything. I think that's really a lot
mm,
to do with
mm.
it. Again, but it's all those. It's an absolute barrier to entry. Some of these things they're trying to solve. That's what I mean. It's not even the money or anything else, right?
Mm,
It's not just any kind of technical thing. It's about how does a human being want to interact with this VR headset and how easy can we
mm.
make it? That's what they really got to focus on. I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
It sounds like they're taking the right steps because if you think about this, right, they had sold millions of PSVR 1 headsets.
Yeah.
So again, they must have a wealth of data they can leverage to understand what the people want,
Yep.
what the people need.
Mm.
So that's
Yep.
a good thing,
Yep. Yep.
definitely a
Yep.
good
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
The other thing is, I mean, obviously they divulged information about the new controllers, which I was actually quite surprised
Mhm.
with. Not the fact that they had new controllers, but the fact that they divulged them so quickly. I did think that they would have haptics, which they do
Mhm.
have, and they've got some technology where you can use certain gestures in your
Oh,
hands as you're
okay.
holding them.
Mhm.
The position of your fingers will
Interesting.
detect.
But that's going to get quite
Yeah,
messy for some people because I know that there's a lot of different techniques to holding a controller, even although you'd expect to most people would hold the controller the same way.
Yeah, true, true. That's another problem for them to solve. But these things look like they look like basically punching gloves almost. They were kind of round and they kind of wrapped around your hand,
Hmm.
and I mean they looked quite cool. Don't
Hmm.
get me wrong. And if they can get the haptics right,
Yeah.
yeah. And I kind of still think there's going to be haptics on the kind of
Hmm.
headset as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
That could be really good because the move controllers did a job, but the actual reality was they were a technology from the generation
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of needed replacing a
Yeah.
long time ago. But what was interesting about the actual announcement of these controllers, and again it was a blog post, was that it said that the controllers would be tracked by the
Hmm.
headset itself. And what that kind of means to me is that this new PlayStation headset is going to have, I hope I got this in the right direction, inside out tracking. And what that means, Al, is that there's going to be no external
Hmm.
camera pointing at you when you're wearing this headset. What you're going to have is your headset with a bunch of cameras on the
Hmm.
outside, and that's how it's going to track you.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah, there's headsets already out there, like the Cosmos uses it.
Hmm.
I think the Index
Hmm.
uses it. So you don't need a camera. The tracking is done by the headset itself, and that's another way to improve not the barrier of entry, but the barrier of
Yeah.
everyday use. So that's kind of
Yeah.
really hopeful, And again, we don't know what the refresh rate's going to be looking like. I'm sure they're going to improve the field of view. I'm hoping it's got a decent resolution. I mean, I doubt it's going to be 1440p per eye.
Mm.
It's probably going to be like 1080p
Mm.
per eye. I'm sure we could kind of handle that or accept that when you consider that the first PlayStation VR had less than 1080p
Mm.
per
Mm.
eye. Something comparable to the other headsets. At minimum, a full 1080p per eye at
Yep.
minimum would be amazing, with the possibility of having better graphics fidelity because the machine rendering the graphics behind it is that much
Yep.
more impressive. I think PSVR could be something that pushes kind of VR upper level. If they can sell it for the right price,
Yeah.
there's no
I,
doubt about
I
that.
I'd definitely be keen on a PS5 with PSVR 2, right? It'd be one of the reasons why I would get a PS5.
I think it's very possible. I mean, when I think about VR, especially for
Yeah.
PlayStation, I kind of think to myself, there's a strong possibility, yeah, that one day, whether it's cloud gaming or not, yeah, that the console is gonna just change. You won't be a console
Mm.
product anymore. Whether it's something that's inbuilt to your television, because televisions are getting that much more
Yeah.
sophisticated, yeah. Whether it will evolve into a game service like Game Pass that you can play anywhere on anything, it will
Yeah.
evolve, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But where does that leave a company like Sony that creates so much revenue from their games consoles? And, again, a vehicle to sell
Yeah.
their content. But they still want to sell
Yeah.
hardware.
This is where the shift to you've made an interesting observation, I think, with the use of smart TVs and actually having things in there, because apps and things like that on top of it are probably the key way in. And then whether you could reuse some of the hardware that is available on these smart TVs nowadays as your vehicle to present the information onto the TV. Or
Yeah,
the
correct.
next topic, but the cloud streaming services and streaming that on straight onto a TV. Where does that
Yeah,
leave that PlayStation and
yeah,
the PlayStation console and things like that?
yeah, yeah, correct. Absolutely correct. But if Sony want to keep selling hardware
Yep.
to people, yeah, gaming hardware, the only gaming hardware long term they can sell to anybody is a VR
Hmm.
headset
Hmm.
and
Yep.
controllers. They may not need to sell you the device that renders the graphics, but
Indeed.
they might be able to sell you the device where you view these graphics from. I kind of think in the back of my mind that is why Sony are so keen on
Mm.
VR,
Mm.
because at some point, based on the model they decide to follow, they may need to leave the kind of traditional console business model behind them.
Yep.
They
Yep.
need to maybe focus on something else. So it's an interesting
They
one.
can go back into the phone market properly.
God, well, they haven't left it,
Yeah, no, but it's
unfortunately.
just
You
a
know what I
bit
mean?
of
Like,
a.
yeah, But the other thing I was thinking, and this is something that's a bit science fiction. Yeah, I was thinking about the Quest. I think
Mm.
you've had something like that, right? I kind of thought about it, and I thought, look, Sony and people are kind of talking about Sony getting back into the handheld portable gaming
It would be
device.
quite nice to have another PSP did really well, right? And it
Yeah, yeah,
was
it did.
yeah.
It did. It was stellar console. So was the
Mm.
Vita, really. Why would Sony get back into it? I mean, it's Nintendo dominated. It's smartphone dominated. But if they really wanted to get back into that in some shape or form, my personal opinion is, right, rather than doing what Microsoft are doing with the Xbox Series X plus Xbox
Yep.
Series S, their cycle maybe should be their newest console, like a PS5, and then the generation before that becomes a portable
Mm.
device. And the reason they can do that now is because they're now on the x86 ecosystem. They're running that, so there's some continuity there. And then you'd have a device where you'd have some ready-made games that you could play on the
Yep.
move. Granted, they might not be all optimal to play on the move, but the majority, I'm sure, would be.
Hmm.
You get a serviceable experience, and you would not need to necessarily worry so much about developing software. There wouldn't be such an emphasis on that. Maybe you can focus on just developing the first party stuff
Yep.
or the second
Yep.
party stuff. But in addition to that, why not have this kind of small handheld device as the back end or the grunt for a really cheap VR
Mm.
device? Like those Samsung devices where
Oh
you
yeah,
just
yeah,
put your
yeah,
phone
yeah,
in
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah? Why not
Mm.
do that? Because not only have you got the PS4, standard kind of games, but you've also got a back catalogue of VR
Yep.
games.
But
So why not do
yeah, but
this?
this is what I'm thinking is that the phones, and I've been playing with this idea as well, is that using the phone to stream stuff onto a big 4K TV because actually it's more powerful than a lot of, how should I say, 4K viewers, 4K kind of setup tops right next to your TV. Actually, your phone is probably more powerful, at least the
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
the most modern ones. And actually, can you
Oh, the
just
flagship,
yeah,
the flagship
yeah,
phones. Yeah,
exactly,
definitely.
yeah, and using some of those things to kind of send across.
Mm, definitely. I wonder if Sony are even
Mm.
looking at this. To my mind, the upfront investment of software anyway would be a little bit less. They'd have a kind of unique selling point over and above maybe kind of a Switch if they could implement the kind of VR part, and it could be absolutely cheap enough for it to be viable. So,
Yeah.
it's a bit of science fiction, but there you go. I like a bit of science fiction now and again. Keeps it interesting, you know
Yeah,
what I
but
mean?
I think they also should think about, being well, maybe this is more the phone manufacturer's problem, but making your phone literally be a booster for graphics or booster for CPU or booster for, just being able to hook into additional power that's on there when you're probably not utilizing it and you're on you're working on your own desktop or laptop and using it as a almost like boost as like a flash drive to boost stuff or something.
But you need you need the right kind of ecosystem
Mm.
for that, don't you? It needs to be well planned. You need the right kind of I/O connectivity. It's like that is a big investment actually.
No, but then you should be able to, okay. So the other, if you go to push it a bit further, we'll go back to the crypto mining thing. Is rather than mining on GPUs, you're all mining on your phone.
That'll be the next thing, Hal. Yeah. Next podcast, right? There'll be a story about banks and banks of kind of high end, kind of flagship kind of smartphones, all crypto mining. But this time with 1,000 fans pointing at them, not 100. Yeah. And no way for them to detach the screens very easily either. That'll be the next
Yeah.
thing. Okay. Well, with that said, I think we
Yeah.
should kind of move on. We've set the scene nicely for future VR conversations, and when more information comes out of PSVR
Yeah.
2, maybe it will be time to really do a more direct comparison with what's in the
Yeah.
PC market. We're talking about a device that should be between 300 to 400 pounds, euros, or dollars, versus some of the higher end PC stuff that goes up to about
Yeah.
$1,000, pounds or euros. So it would be an interesting comparison.
Yeah. I'm hoping, and again, this is because I'm probably looking for one on the PC kind of end. Is things that would push to that similar price point that PlayStation is doing. But yeah, I know the Quest is close, but I don't know if it's necessarily the right one for me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Quest is the most value for money. The Cosmos that I was talking about, that's about six
Yeah,
hundred
yeah,
pounds, and the Index is a
yeah,
thousand
yeah.
pounds. Back before this whole issue with supply and demand and whatever else, that was a price of a reasonable
Yeah.
PC. One thing I will also say is that it's surprising how many VR headsets there have
Mm.
been. Because when I did some background reading for the podcast, I realized that, my God, there's been so many VR
Yeah.
headsets out there. I mean, it's just not the handful.
Mm.
You're talking, I mean, at least 20,
Mm.
if not more.
Yeah, but
An
there's been, I
astonishing amount.
guess, most of them are kind of isolated to a few brands, right? HTC, Oculus, and those sorts of things. Yeah, and obviously Valve created their own one, um, and then a few other ones. If you argued that Samsung and the things they did with the phone headset gear,
Well,
yeah,
that's where the surprise
mm,
comes, Al. If you look at the
mm,
list, there's some well-known PC
mm-hmm,
makers who have tried their hand at
uh-huh,
releasing
a VR headset.
a kind of VR headset. Yeah, a VR headset. It's more than you think, and I was actually incredibly surprised when I kind of read the
Mm,
list,
mm.
and I thought, wow, those guys did it, try to do it as well.
Well,
Because it was the next big thing for
mm,
a long while.
yeah.
But but anyway, I think we've talked long enough about VR, and I think it's high time we move to our last topic. So, Al, the next topic we really want to talk about is really cloud
Mm,
gaming, aka
yeah.
game streaming. So, we know now that Stadia and Google seem to be changing tact
Mm,
with their
mm,
offering. Okay, they've closed down their first party development
yeah.
capability for
Yeah.
Stadia. Jade Raymond, who had worked on the Assassin's Creed
Mm,
franchise and was leading the first party development for Stadia, has already moved on.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. She set up a new studio called Haven, and they're now doing a Sony PlayStation game.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that would, to me, that was
Yeah.
quick. So this sounds like it had been on the cards
Mm,
for a
mm.
while. Yeah. Been on the
You mean
cards for a while.
the way that Stadia was just reducing down what it was focusing on?
Well, they're changing
Mm, mm,
direction. I don't know if it's necessarily a
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
reduction, but they're certainly
Yeah.
changing
Yeah.
direction. So it's kind of like, if Google are
Mm.
doing this, what in actual fact is the future for
Yeah,
streaming?
I don't know if you noticed, but there was not necessarily a more popular gaming service or a cloud gaming service, but Shadow, which hosts basically virtual gaming machines. Um, I think went bankrupt. I think if I remember correctly,
Oh,
recently. Yeah.
really?
So if you look them up, Shadow, I think is they're a US service, so I've never tried it. Actually, there might be something in Europe that they did, but I think they've kind of finished up recently. But I think my kind of experience,
Interesting.
GeForce Now was very good. I did enjoy using GeForce Now, or when I was on the beta for it.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I actually think there are what I would call four big players.
Mm.
I'm sure there's certainly more companies
Yep.
involved trying to build a business out of this. Those offerings are pretty much Microsoft and Xbox's
Yep.
xCloud, PS Now,
Yep.
Stadia, and GeForce
Mm-hmm.
Now. And now, actually, before the podcast, I actually tried
Uh huh.
Stadia, GeForce Now, and PS
Mm-hmm.
Now. And the only reason I didn't even attempt to kind of xCloud is I think that was on a beta
Uh huh.
basis, and that beta's closed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I will say is this, yeah, out of the three that I tried,
Yep.
I would actually say PS Now felt like the best of the lot.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that it didn't have its problems, because it
Mm-hmm.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But were you streaming that onto your PlayStation 5?
Yes, I was.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so I think this is where the comparisons get interesting because with GeForce Now,
Mm,
I was using it on laptops, I was using it on my phone, I was using it in all sorts of different environments, which was quite interesting.
yeah. Now my PlayStation is actually wired in terms of
Mm,
the
mm-hmm,
network.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's definitely an
Yep,
advantage. When I tried Stadia and GeForce
yep,
now, it was on my fairly high-end
yep.
PC, but on Wi-Fi.
And that will be quite. This is probably my main point when I get onto it as well on cloud streaming services is the reliability of your connection.
Yeah. This is the part I'm going to talk about next that's going to blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because whilst PS Now felt the best,
Mm.
I felt that all three of them were fairly reliable.
Mm.
I did. I mean, certainly on the Wi-Fi connection, both Stadia and GeForce dropped the resolution and the fidelity, which you can accept, yeah. But in no way did I feel that the games were
Mm.
unplayable. And this is going to make you laugh, right? But the way I tested Stadia and GeForce, because obviously I was with GeForce Now and Stadia, I had the free offering.
Mm-hmm.
I spun up Destiny. Yeah, I did. I spun up Destiny,
Mm-hmm.
and to me it made sense, right? Because where I think cloud gaming and streaming will fall down on its face is with the
Yep.
latency and with the twitchiness of certain
Yep.
games. So that was my primary reason for doing
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. But however, when I did that, I didn't notice any
It,
latency.
in I think if you get the right environment, right, and the right setup, and the right connections to the right server, then actually latency becomes extremely low. Even although you're
Yeah.
jumping through an extra cloud service that's in there. And it's all about the reliability of your broadband connection, really,
Yeah.
and how big,
Absolutely.
and how much bandwidth you've got in there. So as long as you've got something that's good enough,
Absolutely.
then actually it will work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's because I mean, some people are a bit more sensitive to latency, and maybe my reactions are so slow now, it won't matter. You know what I
I,
mean? Like
well, I think with
I can't go
I
quick.
think with PVE, if you treat PVE games, then you're probably okay. If you treat like, I think I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
using GeForce Now a lot for things like, I actually played like Monster Hunter on it, which was quite nice, and then stuff like Civ 6. Civ 6 was really enjoyable playing, using GeForce Now. So you could play it from anywhere.
I can imagine games like that being perfect
Mm,
for streaming,
mm.
and that's the thing. I mean, there's certain games that are just much better for that type of
Yeah,
technology.
and if it's not latency sensitive, then even
Yeah,
better, right?
absolutely.
And you could run it from anywhere. The other advantages I thought you could get from using GeForce Now was there's no noise, no fans spinning up from your through your PC or
Yeah,
laptop
it's just video, isn't it?
to handle the suddenly
Yeah,
the
yeah.
upshift in the graphics usage and things like that. So you don't get the noise, you don't get the heat from it.
True,
Although
true.
some people want the heat whilst in winter, there is some advantages also by using that. It's basically the problem goes somewhere else into a server room somewhere, I guess.
One thing I will say though, I mean, the promise of getting into game
Mm,
immediately, to me, that's not even a real
mm.
promise, and certainly not with the freer
Yep,
offerings.
yep, yep, yep,
You know,
yep. Not Stadia style anyway. Not the way that they demoed it. I think. Yeah.
I think Stadia was less of a
Mm.
problem than PS Now
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
GeForce
yeah, yeah.
Now. Yeah, because before you could get in game, what PS Now and GeForce Now were doing was looking for a free server to run the
Yep.
game, right? So for PS Now, that felt at least initially 30
Mm-hmm.
seconds, to do
Yep.
that. GeForce Now, not as
Mm.
bad, but still there was
It,
a lag. And I know with the paid for
yeah.
offering,
You'll get reserved. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that significantly reduces that. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Generally speaking, the experience was good, and I was
Mm.
actually super, super, super surprised.
Yeah. And I think the reason. So I think it's probably about a year or two out, and I think COVID has knocked it for six because everyone's at home. No one's traveling. I used another example would have been that when I was in London and kind of using when I was with my desktop, I wouldn't use GeForce Now as much. But when I'm kind of away from London or somewhere else, then actually using GeForce Now across that with the local server tied to it is amazing, and I can still have my original account and original game kind of playing off of it. So, but I think once travel starts to go again, and once things like that, and the advantage of having a cloud service that you can access from anywhere, then and if you assuming you have a reliable 5G connection or something or a local Wi-Fi, then you're good to go.
So Al, going back to PS Now,
Mm.
actually, I'm basically gonna let you know how I tested PS Now.
Mm-hmm.
I tested a shed load of games on it really well. Shed load meaning more
Yeah.
than two. Right? So basically, I tested it with Primal,
Mm.
which is an old school PS2
Yeah.
game. I tested it with the original Killzone, which is
Mm-hmm.
also on PS2.
Mm-hmm.
I tested it with Killzone Shadowfall, the launch title for PS4.
Mm-hmm.
I tested it with Black Ops 3.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few other titles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Horizon, because obviously I'd been playing that game,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And to be honest with you, every one of them
Mm.
functioned extremely well. I thought functioned extremely
Mm.
well.
Mm.
Yeah, extremely well. And you know what? I was when I got into this, I was half expecting to really pan these services because the controls would have been
Mm.
awful, and there would have been so much latency.
Yeah.
But you know what? I didn't get any of that.
Okay, so I've not done much research, if at all, on PlayStation Now. But have they done something tricky, like actually pre-cached a game or something onto the PlayStation 5 rather than actually streaming?
No,
Hmm.
it's just streaming.
Interesting.
I mean, if you recall, they bought that company Gaikai, which was some. I think it was it Dave Perry? I can't even remember
Hmm.
now, right? But it was it was a technology for game
Yeah.
streaming, so they kind of bought into that. But I mean, as far as I know, I'll say this, right? I originally thought the delay in getting into game was somehow they were caching,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
But the more I kind of used it, I realized it wasn't
Hmm.
caching. It was just them trying to find a spare server
Yeah.
to run the
Yeah.
game
Yeah.
on.
I mean, that's how the GeForce Now works. It finds you a
Yeah,
server. Yeah.
exactly the same thing. And your whole point on caching, I kind of think that at some point that might be a viable model for people to
Hmm.
follow.
Hmm.
Because let's be honest, like not everybody has the same reliability or level of internet
Yeah.
connection all over the world. It's just not
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that could be something that people look into. No doubt about that. But yeah, I was surprised. I mean, all three services obviously had a drop in
Hmm.
fidelity and
Hmm.
resolution,
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I kind of expected
Yeah.
that, and I wasn't that bothered
Hmm.
about that.
Hmm.
What was surprising was the latency wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It was absolutely playable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe for somebody who basically plays competitive and they would
Yeah.
notice. But for me, Joe blogs, game now and again, perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly
You
fine.
just find the non-latency sensitive games and go for those ones, right? So again, the ones I played a lot, I think was definitely Monster Hunter World from actually almost all over
Yeah,
the place. At my brother's place, at my aunt's place or something. Yeah, if I was staying over for a night, then I'd still be able to hook into their Wi-Fi
yeah,
and off I go back to
absolutely.
where I was.
Absolutely. But dude, I basically played a lot of FPSs on these
Mm.
services to
Yeah,
test them.
yeah, yeah.
Even with those guys, I didn't experience a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Again, reasonably impressed. Would these guys replace what I do normally? No. But I can imagine them as a
Mm.
nice complement to what you have. I think you mentioned this
Yeah,
last time as well,
yeah,
Al. Won't replace what I have, but it could be a nice
yeah,
complement. You can imagine these services being used for maybe
yeah,
demos.
yeah.
Try before you buy. Yeah?
I honestly think its real advantage is when you're traveling. But obviously with with COVID situation, we don't know how that's going to pan out just yet. But
Or even if you have a platform
mm,
like a
mm,
Mac, which is not necessarily geared up
mm,
to play AAA games, if
yep,
you know what I
yep,
mean.
yep, 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 yep.
And could you imagine a situation where something like a GeForce Now becomes available on even PlayStation?
Well, that
You know?
is, I think that is the thing. If you had GeForce Now and all these other streaming services as part of the smart TV setup, and you have it as an app there, why would you need a console? Why would you need things that are hosting these things? So, um,
Yeah, correct,
or as
correct.
I was doing, it was also running GeForce Now from my phone, and hook a Bluetooth controller, and off I go.
At the end of the day, these services should be able to run on anything,
Yep,
anytime.
yep.
Yeah, even Game Pass. To me, it wouldn't even surprise me that at some point Game Pass would run on a PlayStation. Microsoft would love that.
Yeah, but that's also why I wanted my Steam library on an Xbox. That would have been awesome.
It's all of these things to be considered. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised, and it made me feel there is some hope for
Yeah,
streaming.
I just think it was the wrong. How should I say? The COVID has pushed it back because everyone's at home, right? And everyone's got their own broadband. They've got their own wireless. Why the hell would they stream onto a cloud service when they've got their own kit at home? But if you're traveling out and about, I think that is where you'll get the most advantage from it.
Yeah, I think there's an absolute use
Mm.
case for it. It's like you said, the whole traveling where you can't kind of get access to your normal hardware. It's the fact that you want to take your games
Yep.
collection, yeah, and play it on anything.
Mm. Mm.
To a degree, that's where I think PlayStation needs to kind of develop a
Mm.
little bit in this area, because if they broaden their streaming service to include many, many more
Mm.
games, right? Why is it unreasonable for me to expect games that I've bought from the PlayStation Store or
Yeah.
physically to be
Mm.
accessible from PS
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why isn't that a
Yeah,
thing?
that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense, right? It's in your account. It's in your library. Why is that not hooked
Yeah.
in together? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other stupid thing is, PS Now allows you to down, as well as streaming, any game that is basically streamable on PS Now, you can literally download and play
Yeah.
locally
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
It's like getting it down from the PlayStation Store.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit of a no-brainer. Well, I think anyway, but I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of things that I've not thought of, but I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, obviously, there's that. There's the fact that if there's exclusives on another platform, maybe the game services are the way forward. Like we'll open it out. We'll never develop the basic native app on the
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
but we will allow game streaming services to exist. So if our if our gamers want to basically indulge in all of that,
Yep.
go for it.
Yep.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, out. You know what? Pleasantly surprised it was that good, because I
Mm.
didn't really expect it to be any good. Not at all.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, my experience has always been positive. So, for me, it's a good thing. But yeah, glad to hear you've got a good experience from it as well.
I mean, haven't tried xCloud
Mm.
yet, but I'm sure that's going to be comparable. But with what I tried, yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. I think there is a future for it. It might not be what's being sold to us
Mm.
right now, but there is definitely a future for this. And
Yep. Yep. Yep.
like we've said, it really is like running a data
Mm.
center. That's
Yep.
all it is, I think. But running data centers are quite expensive.
Yes.
So it's like what do you get when you return investment? That's the question now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if my want is for these services to become more of a complement to the existing traditional services, with the amount of time, money, and investment it takes to basically run these types
Yeah.
of services, is it
Mm.
worth it?
Mm.
That is
Well, it needs to
really
be
the
viable,
question.
right? Otherwise, they'll just stop doing it. That's the point. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, so I think it's better than I thought it was. But I'm a cheap date. One thing that I will say before we kind of leave the subject is that I really didn't like the way I had to set up Stadia because you had to go through your phone and all
Hmm.
that. I did not like that, but I can understand why they would have done that because again, it's something you're going to be able to play on your mobile
Hmm.
device. But yeah, it's certainly all three services did a job. Let's put it that way. They're not going to replace the way I like to play games, but they certainly
Hmm.
did a
Hmm.
job.
Cool.
Okay, Al. I think that really wraps up the podcast today. That's the
Mm.
last subject. That's the last topic. So, I think it's time to really ask the regular question that I
Mm.
always ask, and then really
Yeah.
say our
Yeah.
goodbyes. So, Al, what are you playing, and what tech-related things are you doing right now?
Yeah. So game wise, I've actually started playing a bit of Cyberpunk, which is quite interesting. Um,
Ooh,
and obviously it's one of our topics anyway for a later point. But
hmm,
I've only encountered one or two immersion breaking bugs so far, but just one
just
or
one
two.
or two.
But in general, it's still a very good game and good experience. Hoping to play a bit more with the kind of bank holidays kind of coming up as well.
Yeah,
So
definitely,
yeah,
definitely.
we'll see about that one. Tech, not much really. Yeah, same old. It's just continuing to use the kind of the new laptop and things like that. Really, nothing really changed much in that side.
Yeah, how's the laptop
Really
going,
good.
Al?
Really enjoying it. It's definitely a lot better than the previous things that I was kind of running on. And I mean, it's allowing me to get back into things like again CS:GO, Dota, the more competitive stuff again.
Yeah, sure,
So
sure.
it is good. I am enjoying it. And again, playing, exploring things like Cyberpunk and things like that.
Cool bananas, I think.
Cool. What
Sounds
about
good.
yourself, Joe? What have you been playing with?
Well, as you know, with the mammoth back catalogue I have, I've obviously continued to basically chip away at God of War. Not quickly, I might add, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm chipping away, slowly but surely,
Yeah.
and that game still impresses me a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But the big news is, I finally loaded up Spider-Man and started
Nice.
playing. Yeah, can you imagine? Like that took me long enough. And it's obviously the PS5 Miles Morales version, and
Hmm.
also as part of the Ultimate package, the remastered version.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I would say, wowee, it's a decent game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
no doubt about it. Really decent game.
Yeah.
And I'm only sorry that I didn't actually play it before. The combat system reminds me of the Batman games, the Arkham Knight game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The combat in Spider-Man is based on what they did with Batman. So
Yeah. But aren't most a load of those games pretty similar, right? Yeah. I'm sure
yeah,
it's similar to
yeah,
God of War as well
they
as
have a
like
certain
Assassin's
kind
Creed
of
and yeah.
you know uh, language, if you like, design language. So
Hmm. Hmm.
all great games. Thank God I finally started to play Spider-Man. I thought that would be something
Yeah.
that would never happen the way things were going. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's all of that. Obviously, I kind of dabbled in some of these streaming services, and, all of that. And
Hmm.
I think outside of gaming, still trying to learn Google Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
That journey
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
continues, as does the journey with kind
Mm-hmm.
of editing podcasts and videos. And I'm sure I'm gonna have a bit of a journey, when I get to editing this thing. You know what I mean? There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's everything that I'm doing at the moment. It seems to change every podcast, which is good. Still trying to play games, which is good. I think it's all good at the moment. I'm
Yeah.
keeping myself occupied during lockdown is what I'll say.
Yeah, but we're in the midst of it easing now, so it'll be
Yeah, yeah. Thank
interesting.
God for that.
Yeah,
Thank God for that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, Al,
yeah,
I think it's time to say our goodbyes.
yeah. Cool.
So, Al, that really does conclude our third neutral lounge.
Hmm.
So hopefully,
Nice.
at some point, we'll have more people listening. I still say that's probably you and I, my sister, maybe Jag if he wants to join in to one of our kind of like podcasts.
Yeah, maybe at some point as a guest
Yeah,
we'll drag
yeah.
him in.
But obviously it's been as fun as usual. right? So
Yep. Yep.
I'm going to say it's goodbye from me, Joel.
Yeah. It's goodbye from me, Al.
So until next time, have a stellar day.